Good evening, you're watching Awani Tonight with me, Soraya Mia. The Prime Minister's office summoned representatives of Meta to explain the removal of Palestine-related content from Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim's social media platforms and for the company to issue a public apology. This includes content related to the assassination of Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, which was removed and blocked on Facebook and Instagram.
The meeting also sought clarification on the disruptions reported during a live Facebook broadcast of Sunday's Palestine rally at the Axiata Arena Stadium in Bukit Jalil. 3 of the Prime Minister's Instagram posts on July 31st condemning the assassination of Haniyeh were removed from the social media platform. The removal of the post was accompanied by a caption referring to dangerous individuals and organizations. Meanwhile, Communications Minister Fahmi Fadzil said the government would consider developing its own social media application for Malaysians to ensure user safety.
The suspect involved in the kidnapping case of 6-year-old Albertine Liao Jia Hui has been remanded again for 6 days. This is to assist the investigation into a case of possessing child sexual abuse material and pornography.
The remand order against the 31-year-old man was for investigators to probe the suspect under Section 10 of the Sexual Offences Against Children Act 2017 and Section 292 of the Penal Code. Early on Monday, the suspect was taken to the Kulai Magistrates Court to obtain the remand order. This follows his re-arrest by police on Sunday, following discovery of various sex toys, child pornographic material and sexual abuse material at his residence near Kulai. The suspect's previous 13-day remand period for the investigation into the abduction and kidnapping of Albertine ended on Sunday. The child was reported missing by her father on July 20th at a shopping mall in Iskandar Puteri before being found safe at a budget hotel in Batang Kali, Selangor on July 23rd. 4 other suspects, aged 28 to 55, who were earlier arrested and remanded, have been released on police bail.
Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi has apologized for an error made during the Himpunan Pembebasan Palestin rally held at Axiata Arena Bukit Jalil last night. This after several viral video clips on social media showed Zahid mistakenly chanting Hidup Israel during his speech.
In a Facebook post, Zahid stated that he attended the rally with over 15,000 Malaysians to show support and solidarity for the liberation of Palestine. He admitted to making a mistake in his speech in the heat of the moment and apologized for it, adding that with a sincere heart he continued to chant Free Palestine and Long Live Palestine. The rally aimed to send a message to the world that Malaysia condemns the assassination of Haniyeh and stands against the continued oppression of the Zionist regime against Palestinians.
Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim will soon announce the new candidate for the position of Chief of Secretary to the Government. This is to replace the current Chief Secretary to the Government, Tan Sri Muhammad Zuki Ali, who ends his 2-year contract this August 10th.
Anwar also acknowledged that he would lose a key companion and a pillar of the civil service with Zuki's retirement.
Saya ambil kesempatan ini untuk menyatakan penghargaan dan rasa terhutang budi saya. Kerana beliau walaupun berpengalaman dengan Perdana Menteri sebelumnya, tapi menjalankan khidmat benar-benar profesional. Hari pertama, nasihat beliau, pandangan beliau, cadangan beliau, itu secara konsisten yang terbaik untuk perkhidmatan dan untuk negara.
62-year-old Zuki has served as Chief Secretary to the government since his appointment on December 31st, 2019. He was reappointed on August 11, 2022. Zuki has previously served in various posts at several ministries and government agencies, including as Sarawak's Federal Secretary and Secretary General of the Defence Ministry.
We'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back with more.
Di era digital, pemasaran bukan hanya tentang penjualan semata-mata. Penceritaan menarik jadi kekuatan dalam membina hubungan perniagaan, tingkat pengetahuan Perkasakan perniagaan anda. Saksikan segmen JWSME dalam program Awani Pagi dan Niaga Wani setiap Isnin hingga Khamis di saluran 501. Dibawakan oleh penaja utama jelajah JWSME, Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda.
Penyasaran subsidi diesel di Semenanjung tidak akan memberi kesan kepada harga barangan keperluan di Sabah, Sarawak dan Labuan.
660 individu berusia bawah 21 tahun di Sarawak telah diberikan kewarganegaraan.
Sarawak kini menjalinkan kerjasama dengan Bank Dunia dalam menjayakan perdagangan karbonnya.
Welcome back. On to international news. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and fled the country as protesters stormed her official residence today. She and her sister have reportedly taken shelter in India. In a televised address to the nation, Bangladesh's army chief says an interim government will be formed. Tens of thousands of people had been on the move in what has been dubbed the Long March to Dhaka. Rallies that began last month against civil service job quotas have escalated into some of the worst unrest of Hasina's 15-year rule. The protests have since morphed into broader calls for the 76-year-old to step down. At least 94 people have been killed and hundreds more injured in clashes between police and anti-government protesters. Sunday's death toll, which included at least 14 police officers, was the highest in a single day of protests in Bangladesh's recent history. Authorities blocked internet access, suspended rail services, and imposed an indefinite nationwide curfew from Sunday evening, which protesters defied. Meanwhile, Australia has raised its terror threat level to probable from possible, with the country's top intelligence officials citing a homegrown rise in extreme ideologies. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says there was no indication of an imminent attack, but there was increased threat of violence in the next 12 months.
Top intelligence officials said more Australians were being radicalised, willing to use violence to advance their cause.
I want to reassure Australians, probable does not mean inevitable, and it does not mean there is intelligence about an imminent threat or danger. But the advice that we've received is that more Australians are embracing a more diverse range of extreme ideologies, and it is our responsibility to be vigilant. To be clear,
Intelligence officials said extreme ideologies had increased during the COVID-19 pandemic and more recently during the Israel-Hamas conflict. It is the first time the threat level has been raised since 2014, during the height of threats from terrorist group Islamic State. Australia has seen several violent attacks in recent months, some of which have been designated as motivated by extremism.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is holding an emergency meeting with police chiefs today as the country grapples with the worst social unrest it has seen in years. The violence was triggered by the stabbing of 3 young girls in Southport, northwest England last week. The far right has seized on and spread a wave of disinformation, including false claims the attacker was an immigrant, to mobilize anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant protests. However, police have confirmed the suspect was born in Britain and are not treating it as a terrorist incident. On Sunday, rioters set fire and broke into hotels used to shelter asylum seekers in northern England. So far, 420 people have been arrested. Most of the demonstrators are young men wearing balaclavas and British flags, hurling rocks and shouting, "Stop the boats," a reference to migrants arriving on the south coast in recent years. Police blame the violence on online disinformation amplified by high-profile figures. In other news, stock markets in Asia and Australia continued to plunge today, following weaker than expected U.S. jobs data at the end of last week. In Japan, its benchmark Nikkei 225 index tumbled to 12 8.4% in its worst single-day loss since Black Monday of 1987.
The Nikkei also erased all its gains so far this year, moving into a loss position year to date. The Japanese yen, meanwhile, rallied to 7 months highs versus the US dollar. In other parts of Asia, Korean stock markets plummeted more than 8% on Monday, the worst since the 2008 global financial crisis, triggering circuit breakers for the first time in over 4 years. Taiwan stocks plunged a record 8.4% on Monday, with tech stocks including TSMC as investors spooked by a poor outlook for the US economy. Australia's S&P ASX 200 index closed 3.7% lower in what was the worst trading session in over 2 years. And tracking bigger losses in the Asian markets, Malaysia's benchmark FBM KLCI index fell as much as 4.89%, charting its worst day since March 13, 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, as selling pressure continued in global equities. The disappointing U.S. jobs report last week spurred fears that the Federal Reserve made a mistake last week when it kept interest rates unchanged, and that the world's largest economy is headed towards a recession. A sell-off in technology stocks are leading the drop and continue pre-market today, with Nvidia, Meta, and Apple each losing 5% or more.
Cambodia has launched a $1.7 billion US canal project, which aims to provide a new link from the Mekong River to the sea. The project has been given the go-ahead despite environmental concerns and the risk of straining relations with neighboring Vietnam.
The controversial project will link the country's capital, Kep Province, on Cambodia's southern coast, giving it access to the Gulf of Thailand. Once completed, the 180-kilometer Funan Techo Canal is expected to cut the cost of shipping goods to the country's only deep-sea port and reduce dependence on Vietnamese ports. The canal is also seen as a national project by former Prime Minister Hun Sen to build support for his successor and son, Hun Manet. The government has said it plans riverside economic zones along the route, creating tens of thousands of jobs for the country. But concerns remain about the potential environmental impact of the canal, particularly on the flow of the Mekong River, which feeds millions of people in 6 countries through the fish and agriculture it supports. China's state-owned construction giant, the China Road and Bridge Corporation, had won the contract to build the canal. While it would be built jointly by Chinese and Cambodian companies, Hun Manet said his country would retain control with a 51% majority stake.
The Olympic mixed relay triathlon was held in the Seine River today as organizers gave green light after testing the water quality. Training sessions for the swimming leg of the triathlon were cancelled on Sunday due to poor water quality, while the men's event was put back to last Wednesday, taking place on the same day as the women's.
The 16 qualified teams for the mixed relay set off at 8 a.m. on Monday with a dive on the Seine River just under the Alexander III Bridge. Belgium had pulled out of the event after one of their athletes, Claire Michel, fell ill. Organizers, however, said the water quality of the Seine the morning of the women's race, in which Michel finished 38th, was very good. Experts had questioned the method of assessing the river's water quality and whether the right water quality monitoring is used, just hours before the competition was set to begin. Organizers make the call based on analysis of river samples taken the previous day, despite heavy rains 3 days earlier. Paris has spent $1.52 billion of public money on wastewater infrastructure to contain sewage and minimize spillage into the river.
That wraps up Awani Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Saraya Mia, and we'll see you again.